Hello and welcome back to the Loyal Sun Show. That's at the Loyal Suns on all your social medias. Follow us there and follow us here for Pitt sports content you won't want to miss. If you love basketball season and hate Bryson DeChambeau, this is the place for you. The Loyal Sun Show, a safe, sunshiny place for your Pitt Athletics fix. It's November 3rd, Sunday, around 4 p.m. I'm Dylan. I'm here with my co host Squid. And we're here to talk some basketball. Pitt basketball tips off the season Monday night against Radford. High expectations for Jeff Capel's crew, and we're excited to see some games in the Peterson Event Center. Ain't that right, Squid?
I know. It's great. Been looking forward to this Pitt Radford game for some time now. It was what I was most looking forward to for several days. So I'm glad that it's almost here, and there's a lot of great different storylines, some new faces, just all around good stuff, right?
Right. This is what we've been waiting for months. We haven't really had much else to take our attention, so we've been really locked in on this Pitt Radford game. So that's all we're going to talk about today, because
Mhm.
that's what's most important right now. No, we can't do that. Uh, the Pitt football Panthers went and got their heads blown off in Dallas Saturday night. We can't just skip over it and pretend like it didn't happen as much as we'd like to do that. Squid, tell me something, anything. What was that?
I think the simple way to put it is whatever could go wrong did go wrong. It was almost laughable how bad things were.
As David texted us last night, this Murphy's Law ass game. Yeah, like you said, anything that can go wrong did go wrong, will go wrong. And it really started from the jump, like from the beginning of the game. I think we can kick it off there. Uh, maybe the second play of the game, first play of the game, and this is how momentum and they really call it a game of inches, but this is how games swing. And I don't want to say that this game would have swung in a different direction in a game that we got absolutely pounded in from start to finish. But first play of the game, Nate Matlack gets a hand on a screen pass, ball pops up in the air. Kyle Lewis lays out for it, and the ball falls about a feet from his hands, hits the turf. No harm, no foul for SMU. We move to 2nd and 10. Ball thrown to the receiver, Rashad Battle. Uh, there in coverage would have been a catch, but instead of making sure that the receiver hits the ground and is down, Rashad Battle kind of half asses it. The receiver catches himself, runs for a good 40 yards, and SMU never looked back. From there, it was mistake after mistake, big play after big play for SMU, and failure after failure for Pitt. That one play, it's kind of like a microcosm for the rest of the game. I don't want to say that changed the game because, like I said, I don't know what we could have done to change that one. I mean, SMU was up 48-11 at one point, so to blame it on one play is silly, but just felt like that was a microcosm for the rest of the game. Pitt not finishing plays, not as hungry as SMU, not as good as SMU in any facet.
Yeah, little do we know that was just the way the rest of the game was going to go. It was infuriating at the moment, but I don't know where it ranks in the most infuriating plays. I think for the players' sake, it was a good thing that everyone was so bad. It's hard to really put your finger on, oh, that was why we lost. There were like 6 or 7 like major reasons why Pitt lost this game. And I think in the locker room, there's 10 players who could have stood up and been like, yeah, I was really bad tonight. And they were probably players that were big reasons why we won a lot of our games earlier this year. So there's a lot of reflecting to do because that wasn't just a loss. That was an ass beating from start to finish. They didn't slow down. It just kept getting worse and worse. So by the time it was halftime, it was over. We were joking to ourselves, like, what do you even say other than have some pride and make it look respectable?
Yeah, I mean, you put it the right way. Like, there's really nothing that you can pull from that game and be like, oh, that was a positive. Like, it would be one thing. And I did see a lot of Pitt fans on Twitter or wherever you consume Pitt content. Just felt like a lot. There were a good chunk of fans who are like, "Look, we're 7-1. You would have signed up for that at the beginning of the year." Blah blah blah, and that is true. I absolutely would have signed up for 7-1 at the beginning of the year. If it was 7-1 with a blowout loss, still would have signed up for it. That's 100% correct. But, and this is the but, Pitt looked so bad last night that it actually hurts expectations and confidence for the rest of the season. It was like that is a game that it's very hard for me to go back and look at that game. Now, look, it very well may be a one time, one off. It was that game. It was the
Yeah,
one night where everything went wrong.
SMU could just be a very good team, even better than we thought they were.
Right. And that could be it. We lost to a better team. That's all it is. We come out next week and move to 8-1. Maybe that's the case. But it was like, we can't sit back and say, "Oh, no, the defense played bad," but at least the offense was moving the ball. We can count on the offense in future games. It's not like the offense stalled out and the defense bailed us out a few times like we've seen a few times in the past. It's not like Ben Sauls was perfect and we can just rely on 3 points from him every single time like we have been the rest of the season. Every facet of the game performed poorly, and like you said earlier, Squid, some of those players who may have helped us win games in the past, I mean, I think the first person I wanna look at is Eli Holstein. Like, he kinda just looks broken at this point. Um, we were about a month plus removed from him playing a good football game, and I don't know if it's the freshman wall, I don't know if teams have just gotten some film on him, if it's a combination of the offensive line and receivers aren't playing as well as they were early in the season, but something's wrong there. He's not the same guy we had for the first 4 games.
Last night was the first time that I felt like our offensive line was getting manhandled like really bad. I know we have some injuries, some new guys in there, but I thought they've been like, decent enough. Obviously, Syracuse really didn't notice much of anything. They were out there for like 10 minutes the whole game. Uh, the Cal game, there were issues, but it didn't jump off the page. Last night, after every single play, someone's saying, Holstein, stay in the pocket, or, oh my gosh, our offensive line is horrible. And then it turned into an argument of, is Holstein shook and bailing on clean pockets, or is our offensive line that bad that he can't do anything? And by like the second, third quarter, I think it was a combination of both.
Yeah.
He was expecting guys to get through because it was pretty much happening all the time, and guys weren't getting open either. I think in the first quarter, there were a couple times on third and shorts where Holstein would drop back, roll out, nothing there. They'd show the replay, and everyone just bottled up 4 yards downfield. So there's a lot of soul searching internally that has to
Yeah.
happen. As fans, we don't know. Is it Holstein? Is it the play calling? Are we getting figured out? Something's got to give. And you're right, the season isn't over, but we don't want this trend to continue. So what's the explanation for all of this?
Yeah, I think that's the scariest thing right now is has Cade Bell's offense kind of been figured out? Is the film out there now and the higher level ACC FBS coaches have been able to look at enough film, see what they do, see what we had success with, and it's like, oh, okay, we can take that away. Um, it felt like early in the season, and I actually complimented Cade Bell on this multiple times on this show. And a good OC gives the quarterback the answers to the tests right before the snap. And it seemed like early in the season, when Eli was having a ton of success, it was a lot of he catches the snap, takes his drop, turns, lets the ball loose, and he's hitting that first read. I I worry that and not enough of an X's and O's guy to break this down or break down the film and give you specific plays. I do know one play in particular that stands out for this, but um, it seems like after that first read is covered up, that Eli doesn't really either doesn't have other options or doesn't know what his other options are. There was a play, I believe it was actually on the first offensive possession. It's definitely in the first quarter, but Des Reed leaks out of the backfield to the right side. Looks like a play that several times they've picked up a first down on this year. Goes for a big gain, but in this situation, the SMU safety crashed down to the right side of the field. That Desmond Reed option was gone. Eli holds the ball, turns, takes a sack. It feels like, and once again, I don't know if Cade Bell isn't giving him the answers, or he doesn't, or if Eli's not able to work through progressions that Bell has built in. But it just seems like if that first guy isn't there, then Eli is kind of lost. And it doesn't
Yeah,
help that the offensive line hasn't been great either. I mean, it's maybe there's not time to get to that second and third option.
towards the end, it was pretty clear that he'd look for his first read, and oftentimes he would take his eyes off of the receivers and look at the rush and see if he could find a lane. And if there wasn't a lane, he's trying to scramble and make a heroic play. But SMU's D line did a good job of containing him. So he would try to step up into a hole in the pocket, but there'd be a guy right there. So overall, it was a bad game. And I think it snowballed because he was just missing bad throws. He had a guy, I don't think the game was over yet, but there was a third and I think four. Oh, it was a second down, and he just skipped the ball to Desmond Reed to the left. It was just 5 yards short, just a horrible throw. And we ended up not getting anything on third down either. And I think we missed a field goal that drive. So he was just missing guys too. So even when there were guys there, it wasn't pretty. So the offense, the schedule ain't getting easier.
No.
So something needs to change. And it's hard to do on the fly because there's, like I said, so much tape out on teams. I don't know if teams are picking up on his tendencies, but you gotta try to calm down this freshman quarterback on the fly.
Yeah. And I have had to remind myself he's a freshman, but also like he's not like at this point. Like you have 8 starts under your belt at this point, and there's starting to be a bit of a regression. And whose fault that is, I know Narduzzi wanted to take a little bit of that heat off of him yesterday in the post-game presser. Like, there's 11 guys who have to do their job. There's guys up front who have to block. There's receivers who have to get open. There's coaches who have to make the right play calls. But I do wonder, and curious what you think. What do you think the leash is on Holstein right now? Do you think it's trot him out every game and let him make mistakes, let him learn, or do you think there's a level of urgency with being 7-1 and not being completely out of the ACC race? And I want to talk a little bit more about that. Definitely feels like a long shot after last night, but like, is there any part of you that thinks they might make a change if this doesn't get better early first half next week?
Well, Nate Yarnell going 9 for 10 with 2 touchdowns might make that decision a little bit harder. I'm surprised I didn't see more people calling for Yarnell on Twitter last night. But the fact that even the fans weren't really calling for him shows that there's probably still a bit of a leash. Like
Yeah.
you said, 7-1, the ACC championship game looking pretty unlikely, but by no means are we dead. So you do have that to play for. But this is also your prized transfer. Does benching him with 2 games left for Nate Yarnell, like what's the risk reward on that? Like you might win one more game. How actually good is Yarnell? There's a
Yeah.
lot to weigh here, and it's delicate because there's still a lot of football left. You don't want to watch your quarterback just absolutely tank his confidence to end what was a great freshman year.
Right.
They got to get
And
him back on track somehow. If it costs you a game, I don't know. In the long run, is that something you just got to deal with? Because college football players are so delicate. And you
yeah,
don't want to rub anyone the wrong way or step on anyone's toes. And then before you know it, we have no quarterbacks.
right. And I wasn't even completely saying like as a not just from purely a perspective of like, is Yarnell better, but like, is there a level of you have to protect Holstein, like if it continues to look bad, but also does benching him really protect him, or does that shatter his confidence? Um, like you said, it's a delicate situation. The safe move is probably just let Holstein play it out, stick with him. He's obviously won us some games pretty much through his heroics only. He's earned a couple bad games, and he just lost his first game as a quarterback at Pitt.
Yeah.
So I don't want to
Yeah, I guess you're right. That was.
that was quite literally his first loss. So I don't want to sound the alarms too much, but it's just interesting to think about because it has kind of looked bad for about a month. Um, Once again, Syracuse game didn't get much of a read on anything, but if we're looking at this objectively, it's been a little rough. Um, Outside of Holstein, I mean the offense just we said the O-line hasn't looked great. Still really no semblance of a downhill running game. Still just Desmond Reed kind of dancing behind the line of scrimmage for a couple seconds before he gets hit or finds a hole and gets a few yards. Um, Defensively, I
Before we
mean,
move on to the defense,
oh god,
we talked on it a little bit with Cade Bell in this offense, and are we figured out? I think the bigger issue is I don't know what our identity is. Like
yeah,
we play with some tempo here and there,
but it
but
seems like they've gone away from that even
yeah,
a
they
little bit.
played really fast on a couple of drives last night. It didn't really change a whole lot. So I don't know
No
what it
rhythm.
is. It seems like we're just a team that throws a lot of quick passes, and the explosive plays have gone down. We gotta get back to the basics and just try to get some open guys for Holstein because last night there was no rhythm,
No,
couldn't do anything, and even whenever the game was still in reach, I don't think anybody felt good about a comeback.
no. Yeah, and yeah, you're right. There's no identity. The rhythm is completely gone. It doesn't ever feel like early in the year it was we were getting first downs on first down, on second down, we were getting first down. Now last night it felt like it looked like a little bit like last year's offense where it was like we were scratching and clawing to get to a third and four and hoping that we can pick up another 5 yards to advance the sticks. Like this and once again, this might just go back to SMU might be really good, but that was the most that they've looked like a bad team, an overmatched team. I mean, since last year. So, uh, but
The
like,
Virginia game will tell us a lot.
yeah,
We should be able to have a lot of success against this Virginia defense. If we have a great game, 400 yards, able to throw the ball at will, run the ball a little bit, come back down to earth, still have tough games, but you at least feel better about yourself. But if they struggle again, like we had excuses for previous games, like the Cal game. I don't know. It happens. You can't put up huge numbers every game. Then the Syracuse game, well, they weren't on the field all that much. Last night, well, SMU was pretty good. Now what? The
yeah,
excuses are done. You got to go out there and play football.
yeah, absolutely. And I started to hint towards talking about the defense, but I think I mean, everyone watched the game. There's not really much to talk about there. Other than I just think SMU looked so much faster. Like it looked like they were bigger, faster, and stronger, and that's all there was to it, which I truly didn't anticipate coming into this game after watching what SMU did against Duke. Obviously, they had all the turnovers, so maybe looking back on it, hindsight 2020, turning the ball over 6 times and still figuring out a way to win. Maybe that means you're pretty good, but like the way Brashard Smith, the
Very
way,
fast.
yeah, Kevin Jennings, the way the receivers, Roderick Daniels just like beating our guys to the outside. It just felt like we were playing an SEC team. So,
Yeah, I think the one play that, oh, I'm not going to say the one play. There were like 6 different times where there were missed tackles.
yeah.
The one that exemplified that the most was the reverse that they ran down around the goal line, and
Oh, see, I had another play in mind, but yes, please go ahead.
Jimmy Scott read the play like a book. He was basically in the spot where the reverse was going, couldn't get a hand on him. Then Javon McIntyre comes over, tries to take an angle, juked out of his jock strap, and then he flips into the end zone. And there were a couple of times before that where it's like, we're missing tackles left and right. Like the safeties were missing tackles. The linebackers weren't in the right spots in these big run plays. So
Yeah,
I guess something that I think of is like sometimes there's coaches that have Pitt's number on defense. Rhett Lashley might.
yeah. Yeah, you said the one play that exemplified that, and that's a great choice, maybe the better choice. The other one I thought of that I thought you were going to mention was the screen pass on 3rd and 10. Rylan Gandy comes up, just completely whiffs on a tackle. Chris Brookins comes in, completely whiffs, trying to dive at his legs, makes
Mm.
another guy miss and scampers for 20 yards, almost gets it to the end zone. Uh, Play was dead to rights, and they simply had a skill guy who made 3 of our guys miss, and it was just the guy making a play. So it was clear that they had more of the playmakers last night. And
Yeah, I
I,
think if
I'll,
going into it, you would say what's Pitt's route to victory, and it's make Kevin Jennings uncomfortable. And after about a drive or two, everyone knew it was clear their whole offensive scheme wasn't going to allow for that,
no,
especially since they were able to run the ball very easily. He was getting the ball out quick. Nothing we can do about it.
yeah, yeah. I'll be interested to see how SMU finishes out the regular season. They finished the season, and gonna go into our next point of like where Pitt stands. ACC title hopes, championship game still alive, definitely on life support, but still alive. Uh, One of the routes of getting back into that top 2, obviously, all of these scenarios basically have Pitt winning out, and I know that after that game, that's hard to picture right now, but let's just assume so. One of those outcomes, I mean, we would want SMU to lose twice. They finished the season with 4-4 Boston College, 4-4 Virginia, and 4-4 Cal. So that team I saw last night, I can't picture losing to any of those 3 teams. Losing to 2 of the 3 of them almost certainly won't happen. And it sure looks like SMU will be in the ACC title game their first year in the league.
Yeah, SMU might be pretty darn good, but maybe we'll get made fun of a lot for SMU joining the ACC, then immediately being one of the best teams.
I've already seen it.
Yeah.
I've already seen it. But with that, like, that's the side of this I want to look at. It's not Pitt isn't, like I said, it's on life support. Obviously, with not playing everyone, it makes things a little murkier. But if Pitt were to win out, everyone listen, I can feel the collective eye rolls from the people listening right now. Uh, I mean, we would have to beat Clemson head to head, but they just took an L and kind of got spanked by Louisville last night. More than likely, would this is strictly off of tweets I've read. I haven't done the math, but could potentially have the tiebreaker if Miami were to drop one of their last 3 because of opponent win percentage, which is one of the tiebreakers. They have Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, and Syracuse to close the season. If that loss came to Syracuse, that would be a common opponent. We would have the win over them. So once again, there's all kinds of tie-breaking procedures. None of these matter whatsoever if Pitt goes and lays an egg in one of the next 4 games. But just, it's not dead. The hopes aren't dead. We're going to need some hope, but they're not dead.
Yeah. Even for the negative Pitt fans out there, I'm not there yet. I think in a few days I'll get back to okay, let's just see what we can salvage this year. Like the scratch and claw, get to 10 wins, and we can all be happy. I don't know if it's more likely that Pitt wins out or loses out. What do you think is more likely if you had to put like a percentage on like potential outcomes?
I feel really bad today and
Mm-hmm.
feel like the wheels could fall off in 7, but it just does. I just don't feel like this team. I don't think this first 7 games were just a complete fluke.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is a good team in there. David had us do that fun thought exercise last week of who is the best team that this Pitt team could beat if their offense played at their highest
Oh
level and the
yeah,
defense played at the highest level. I don't think we thought of the inverse of that. If the defense played as bad as they could and the offense played like we've seen them play a few times, but I would say right now I think it's more likely that they would win out than lose out. Uh, but with that being said, I don't love even saying that out loud because that could be an all-time freezing cold take.
yeah. It was hard for me to actually pick an answer. Like, fresh off the loss, I'm leaning towards lose out, but I don't know. I don't think either is super likely. I think we'll be able to win a few games down the stretch. And as bad as last night was, I don't think we did diminish anything from the 7-0 start. Like I see some fraud talk. Team looked good.
Especially and it's always the perspective of where we were last year. And I don't love to always lean on that crutch of this team was 3-9. We had Frank
But now we
Signetti.
can. There were people doing the when we were 6-0, people were saying if we finish with only 2 wins down the stretch, it's still an 8-win season, and then that's so much better than last year. In the moment, absolutely hate it. After he dropped one and didn't look all that great, the season is still salvageable.
Where do you realistically think they finish this year? Be-
Um,
I think my heart's pretty set on 9-3 at this point. I feel like
yeah.
that's the
Last night
most.
was kind of funny because we just talked about how Clemson didn't look all that great and they looked beatable, but on the opposite side of that coin is our other opponent, Louisville, just looked even tougher.
Right.
So if we're going to be conservative here, we'll give us losses to Clemson and Louisville. Boston College, I think they came out of the gates hot, but they're on a 3-game losing streak. That should be a win. If that's a loss, then the wheels have really fallen off. And same with Virginia. They've shown some flashes, but they just came off of a very, very, very bad loss to UNC. So probably a good thing we have Virginia as our next game, like a really, really much needed get right game. Start to feel good about yourselves going into the Clemson game. If you dropped 2 to Louisville and Clemson, you beat the 2 teams you should beat. I think that's fine.
So
I'm
let's
gonna
look
be
at it this way.
disappointed. I'm really disappointed, but
Let's
whatever.
talk let's talk through the possible scenarios to finish the season. So, win out 11-1, make the ACC title game, most likely a rematch against SMU. Ecstatic.
The way we're feeling right now is like the polar opposite of how we'll feel then. Like it'll be hilarious looking back at the text that we all sent, the things we all said last night, if we're in Charlotte again.
11-1, miss the ACC championship game. Miami runs the table too, so we miss out on the ACC title game with one conference loss. Would be a bit bittersweet, but at the end of the day, could any of us really look ourselves in the mirror and say this was not an epic season?
Now, you just got to tip your caps that in most other seasons, we probably are in Charlotte. It just so happens that there were 2 other really good teams that deserved it.
Okay, drop one down the stretch. 10-2, 10-win season after the debacle that was 2023. I think we still have to be feeling pretty good about ourselves now.
Yeah, that would mean that we steal a game from either Louisville or Clemson, and then at the end of the day, we've got 10 wins against a couple tough opponents.
Okay. Drop
Get a pretty
two.
good bowl game, yeah.
Drop two, any combination of those. Maybe we get one against Louisville, Clemson, drop one, the other two, whatever the combination is, 9-3. Although disappointing with how they started the season, I think it would be unjust to say playing for a 10-win season in a bowl game can be looked at as a failure. Sure, it can be disappointing, but I still think at that point we have to be able to accept what they did this year.
Absolutely. And I think at that point we would look forward and look back a lot. Be like, well, last year we were so bad, huge improvement. And then you finished good enough to where you're feeling even better about next year because of the key pieces coming back. Yes, we lose some, but in a couple of main positions, being quarterback and running back, I don't know, you set yourself up nicely for the next few years. We're back on the map. We're not talking about how, I don't know, if we won 6 games, you're like, well, next year let's win 8, and then after that maybe we'll get back. It's like, no, we're back now. Like, let's make some moves.
Yeah, we're a contender. Make some moves in the portal, and there's a team who can compete for the ACC title. 8 wins, 8-4 after a 7-0 start. I think at this point, I would have to actually say that the season, despite that we predicted they'd go 5-7, 6-6, I think if they finish this year with only 8 wins, 9 in a bowl game, okay, but I'd still that would basically feel like a 6-6 season to me in most normal years.
Yeah, and even though we would probably have one of the bigger turnarounds year over year, just looking at win totals, there'd be a lot of people pissed off at Narduzzi, and I think they'd be pretty fair because we got off to such a great start and then kind of went down the tank, down the stretch. He couldn't right the ship. Um, so, although a great turnaround, should have been greater.
7-5, lose out, go 7-0 to start the season, 0-5 to finish. I think at that point there would have to be a legitimate, like, Narduzzi has 1 year to figure it out. And I know that's crazy. And once again, I'm not saying that that's the case right now because they are currently 7-1, ranked 23rd in the country.
Mm-hmm.
So people listening to this are like, "Oh, you guys are ridiculous." But if that's how this season were to shake out, I mean, there would be more than a handful of people calling for his job.
Yeah. They'll say, sure, you won 7 years. You got us back to a bowl game. You showed that the 3 and 9 years a fluke, but next year better be better. I think that's how I'd think of it, and I'd be pretty pissed off. I mean, that's just a really bad taste in your mouth. We're probably not feeling the best about our quarterback situation if we lose every game down the stretch. So that's another question mark too. People will start saying, is Holstein even the guy if we lose every game down the stretch? Because probably means he hasn't been playing great.
Yeah.
But I do think that is a rather unlikely scenario,
I
even
agree.
in the hours after what we saw last night.
I agree. Yeah, we'll see how this season ultimately plays out. It'll be interesting.
That was a good exercise there, Dylan, because I think the most likely outcomes, end of the day, we'll be pretty happy. At minimum, pretty happy.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I'm excited for this last month of the season. I think I felt terrible last night. Like that was a gut punch. I can't really remember the last time I felt quite like that. I mean, last season was just kind of a loss altogether. 2022, it was like we felt like that team should be better coming into the season, but like I don't know, that was just. I mean, honestly, going back maybe like 2021 against Miami, that was probably, and that was a game that they came to play, ultimately lost in a high scoring affair, but like to just come out in a game that was look, we were hyping it up. It's a top 20 matchup. We were like, "Oh, College Game Day should be there." I'm sure happy now that College Game Day was not in Dallas last night because that would have just been an even bigger national crowd watching us get absolutely pummeled.
Yes. Thank you for putting us on the ACC network.
Yeah, let's keep it that way. And they rewarded us by giving us an 8 p.m. kickoff next Saturday on the North Shore, once again on ACC Network. Hey, night game on the North Shore, I'll take it. We needed one. Needed one before the year let out. Any closing thoughts on the football team here? If you want to close this book, finish
Yeah,
the
I'm
book.
going to be upset. I'm going to be negative. I'm going to be watching some highlights over the next couple of days just to figure out how bad it was. I know it was horrible, but it was like, well, how bad was the line actually? Or how bad was Holstein actually? And do I think this can be fixed? Come Wednesday, I'll be in pretty good spirits again. We have a great opportunity for a get back game and a chance to right the ship. So 7-1, things are things will be okay.
Unless they aren't.
In which case, we have basketball coming.
Great segue. Great transition. We are going to talk some hoops here, just with the timing of the season and being in the middle of what was up until yesterday an undefeated football season. Not going to give you a proper Pitt basketball preview on this episode. Hopefully, sometime this week we can give a little bit more of an in-depth preview on what this season should look like, but would be irresponsible and borderline pathetic if we didn't at least mention that the Pitt basketball team is tipping off the season against Radford Monday night. We've talked a little bit here and there about how excited we are for basketball, but I think we can agree that this is the highest the expectations have been for a Panther team coached by Jeff Capel in the Jeff Capel era. There's people not only talking about getting back to the tournament, but like being a semi decent high seed going back to the tournament.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look at our preview from last year to see what our expectations were. I think we all hoped for the tournament, but I don't think we thought we should be a lock for the tournament, and missing the tournament wasn't like a bad thing if we were close at least. This year, the expectations are high. Like it's tournament or bust. And it's not just make the tournament, it's let's get a game or two or three
Yeah.
or four.
Hey, once we see, I don't know if I'm at 4 games in the tournament just yet, but if a couple games of Jalen Lowe, a couple games of Cam Corrin, Ish Leggett, uh, I'm sure I'll be fully on that boat. But no, this is a really talented roster. They're bringing back a good bit of production. They got some help in the transfer portal and a little bit in the freshman class. So, uh, Squid, we'll be down there at the Pete tomorrow night. Tell me, what are you looking to see from Pitt? Not just from I don't want to say through the whole 31 game regular season, anything like that, but just tomorrow night against Radford. What are you looking to see from your Pitt Panthers?
I'll take the easy answer, and it's Jalen Lowe. I think we all thought that he could be really good coming into the season as Pitt fans, just because we watched him play over the last month and a half, 2 months of the season, and he was huge for this team. So Pitt fans had high expectations for him, but even the national media guys are talking about how he's a first round potential guy and he's one of the best guards in the ACC. And it's not just the Pitt guys saying it; it's the big dogs for ESPN and CBS. So I want to see just how good he is. Uh, there's a lot of different weapons on this team that I think are very helpful, but I want to see how good he is and if he can be that guy to take us deep into March and get us to the top of the ACC.
Yeah,
What about you?
absolutely. I mean, you took the easy one, but I think we have to talk about him because I do think this team will go as far as Jalen Lowe takes them. Like you said, he's getting a lot of national hype as a potential, and then some hype as a NBA prospect. He went to the CP3 camp, Chris Paul camp over the summer. Uh, for those of you who don't follow any of that on social media or didn't see any of that, he actually got some really high praise. So basically, that camp invites a lot of the top guards, both in college basketball and high school. Essentially, those guys are that's invite only that camp, and so you're basically getting the best college guards in the country, but basically the best NBA prospect guards in America from ages like 18 to 22. So all the reviews of Jalen Lowe there were like he was one of the best at the camp. And he's there learning from NBA pros, competing against NBA pros who come to help out at the camp. So it's not like Squid said, it's not just the Pitt guys talking about. Like he is known at this point on a national level. I know I think it was CBS, one of the major outlets, put out their top 100 players in college basketball about a week ago. They listed Jalen Lowe, I believe, at number 81. So like considered a top 100 player in the country. He is going to be the guy. So I'll be interested to see how that supporting cast fills in. And what I'm looking to see the most is what does this team play like? How do they score their points? How does that ball move around? Because last year, despite the success they had, and obviously I mean, Blake Hinton, all-time great Panther, any way you spin it. Hit what 110 3-pointers. So I'll be interested to see how they replace his production. Um, but a lot of the games just kind of felt like, okay, we're gonna try to find Blake and help let him get up a shot. Like no matter if he's covered, if he has a man in his face, we're gonna try to find to get Blake a shot, or we're gonna let Bub Carrington run the pick and roll and try to find himself a shot. It was a lot of times just one of those two guys. Later in the season, Jalen Lowe initiating a lot of the offense. I'll be interested to see tomorrow night against Radford, is that ball moving around a lot more? Because a lot of the social media clips we've seen, it does really look like Cam Corhan as a big can pass a little bit. Guillermo Diaz-Graham can pass a little bit. Um, Obviously Jalen Lowe, like it's going to be the point guard, but even Ish Leggett can pass. Brandon Cummings, like how does that ball move around? Is this ball swinging around, and are we going to have a team where maybe 5, 6 different guys can go off for you any given night? A lot like the 2022 23 iteration of the Pitt Panthers, when one night it was Nelly Cummings, one night it was Nike Sabandy, one night it was Jamarius Burton. Are we going to have more of that this year, or do we end up going de facto to Jalen Lowe or Ish Leggett? Another guy we haven't mentioned his name yet, Damian Dunn, 6-year guy coming from Houston, previously at Temple. I think he can shoulder a bit of the scoring load as well. But I'm just going to be interested to see, I think, where most of the offense is coming from, because they've got a lot to replace. Top 2 scorers from last year gone.
Yeah, I'm a big believer of leaning towards the worrisome side as opposed to, oh, we'll be fine side when talking about replacing your best players year over year for whether it's basketball, football. I think it's hard to expect guys who haven't done it to just show up and just do it. So losing Bub Carrington and Blake Hinson should be a scary thought, but I think we have so many different options. At least a few of them will be reliable at minimum. So you said Jalen Lowish, like, it'll be running the show, but if Zach Austin takes a step, that's great. If Zach Austin isn't all that much better from last year, you got Damian Dunn. Same with a couple other guys. Like Guillermo
And
Diaz-Graham.
Scudella.
Will he take a step up? That'd be great. If not, Cam Corn seems pretty darn good too. Ansel Delalich, pretty sure I'm saying that correct. We'll find out tomorrow. Well, I don't know if he's going to play tomorrow. Hopefully he's back. But there's so many options that, like, on any given night, I think there's a couple of different guys who could be a great number 2 and step up. And the best case scenario is all of these guys are pretty good. And we have a rotation 7, 8 deep that are guys who could go off for a dozen points any night, maybe even more. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of potential. I think there's a very high ceiling for this team if the supporting pieces all put it together.
I think the biggest difference, just looking at the rosters of this year versus Jeff Capel teams of the past, it felt like in past years, it was always like, okay, but who's going to be like the seventh guy in the rotation that they can rely on in March? Like,
Mhm.
are we going to have to squeeze 3 minutes out of Will Jeffress uh, and survive those minutes with Will Jeffress just to have enough bodies to get through ACC play? That will not be a problem this year. Like, there are going to be guys who we're hearing about in the preseason. Uh, I'm thinking like a Brandon Cummings or a Papa Conte. These guys who Pitt fans are like, oh, he can be really good for us. Jorge Diaz-Graham, even, who has kind of struggled to stay healthy and get himself on the court. Like, we have these guys who it's like, oh yeah, they're good players. But it might come once we get into the thick of ACC play, like those guys might just not be able to get in just because they have enough good players ahead of them. And at the end of the day, it's really hard to play like 10, 11 guys at a high level in college basketball. Realistically, most rotations, and Jeff Capel's done this in the past, maybe out of necessity, but most of those rotations end up shortening down to like 7 or 8 guys once you get into March. So it might. This is the first Jeff Cable team where I feel like there might be just some really good players who can't see the floor.
Great problem to have.
Great problem to have. Much better than the inverse there. So that's tomorrow night at the Peterson Event Center. We get to see this version of the Pitt Basketball Panthers in action for the first time. Cannot wait. We'll be there, front and center, boots on the ground, and I don't know. I remember last year's opener against North Carolina A&T. Bob Carrington had a triple double in his debut and immediately shot up draft boards. So we'll see who breaks out and puts us on notice tomorrow night.
Let's do it.
Can't wait. Please win, by the way. So that's where we stand. Pitt football is at 7-1, ranked number 23 in the country. Pitt basketball tips off against Radford with high hopes, seriously competing for the ACC and securing their bid to March Madness. They're probably already on the bubble. It's a good time to be a Pitt fan. Might not feel like it, but it is, I promise. So stick with us. We'll talk to you later this week. We'll be previewing the game against UVA. Maybe do a little recap of basketball, see where things stand. Hopefully, we've got a win under our belt. Praying that we have a win under our belt. Nothing can go wrong there. But as always, thank you all for listening. Please win. Please make it out to the Pete. Please keep supporting the football team. Make it out to Acrisure next Saturday. And as always, hail, loyal sons of Pittsburgh.